Christmas Eve at my parents' house was supposed to be a celebration for my older brother, Brandon. But the invitation came with a strict order for me to arrive early. I pulled up in my 10-year-old sedan, wearing a plain winter coat and carrying a scuffed work bag. For years, my family believed I was barely scraping by as a late-night freight dispatcher. What they did not know was that I owned Crestline Distribution Group, a $2.7 billion logistics empire. I kept my success private because every achievement I ever had was either stolen by Brandon or claimed by my parents. I wanted to see how they would treat the woman they believed was broke one last time. Before we dive into the wild turn waiting beside my dinner plate, drop a comment below telling me where you are watching from today, and hit that subscribe button to support the channel. My mother, Denise, inspected my coat with an exaggerated sigh before warning me not to embarrass the family in front of our guests. 10 minutes later, everyone was seated, and Brandon sat beneath a banner celebrating his new job as CEO of Meridian Medical Supply with a salary of $324,000. My father, Gregory, raised his glass, declaring Brandon was the only child with true discipline. Brandon passed his phone around, showing off a leased luxury SUV and a mansion he planned to buy, while making sure to remind me that they were going to help me become presentable too. His wife, Allison, Meridian's chief financial officer, soaked in every compliment, while my aunt and uncle openly mocked my dispatching job as unskilled phone work. Gregory compared my life to Brandon's, claiming I kept choosing jobs that allowed me to disappear. I could have pointed out that my decisions controlled freight, moving through 22 states, and that over 14,000 employees relied on my company. Instead, I asked Brandon about Meridian's next move. He proudly announced that Crestline Distribution Group had invited Meridian to a final presentation on December 26th for a massive multi-year contract. Brandon boasted that Crestline approached him because of his stellar reputation. The truth was that Meridian had begged for a meeting 5 times, and I only granted it as a backup option. When I mentioned the contract only mattered if the numbers were real, Allison's expression hardened immediately. After dinner, my mother gathered everyone into the living room for a staged intervention. Gregory opened a financial packet filled with fake budgets, insisting I had no retirement strategy, no property, and no professional network. Aunt Kelly slid apartment listings and office coordinator job applications onto the coffee table, telling me to stop pretending dispatching was a real career. Brandon then placed a black folder in front of me, containing an employment contract from Meridian. He demanded I resign from my job to become his personal assistant for $42,000 a year, handling his calendar, travel, and family errands. When I hesitated, Brandon sneered that people without options should not negotiate like they have leverage. As Brandon pushed the pen closer, I noticed a second document beneath the contract bearing my late grandfather's name and the words Bennett Family Trust, which my mother quickly snatched away. Right then, Allison's phone rang, and she slipped out into the hallway. I followed to grab my coat and overheard her quietly ordering someone to alter inventory reserves so the lender would not see the original warehouse valuation before Crestline reviewed the files. When she caught me listening, she tried to bribe me with a better job if I kept quiet. Soon after, my grandmother Marjorie pulled me into the garage and handed me a brass key to a safe deposit box. She confessed my parents had forged my signature to steal a valuable piece of land left to me by my grandfather, using it as collateral for Brandon's career. On Christmas morning, I used Marjorie's key to open the safe deposit box, retrieving the original trust documents and letters proving the forgery. My college transcripts placed me 1,500 miles away on the day the document was notarized. By sunrise on December 26th, I dressed in a sharp navy suit, put my old coat over it, and arrived early at Crestline headquarters. I set up a secure video conference for our board members, outside counsel, and Meridian's primary lender. At 8:30, my family walked into the lobby. Brandon handed me his presentation case, ordering me to carry it upstairs, while Allison warned me not to speak unless spoken to. In the grand boardroom, Brandon delivered a glowing speech, explicitly assuring the room that Meridian's inventory numbers were verified, its internal controls were tested, and its collateral was unchallenged. Allison confirmed the financial records, lying directly on camera that no auditor or employee had raised concerns. Gregory even stood up to declare that the family's real estate collateral was free from competing claims. Once Brandon concluded, Rachel, my chief operating officer, asked if all material statements had been disclosed. Brandon proudly confirmed everything was complete. Rachel then turned across the room and asked me to take my seat at the head of the table. Brandon chuckled awkwardly, telling me to sit back down because she meant someone from Crestline. That as I walked to the head of the table, security remained perfectly still. Rachel activated the main screen, displaying the Crestline logo alongside my full title, Lauren Bennett, founder and majority owner. Silence descended on the room as I took my seat. Brandon stood frozen. Denise stared at the screen in complete disbelief, and Allison went completely pale. I picked up Brandon's unsigned assistant contract and placed it next to his presentation, pointing out that less than 2 days ago, the family tried to force the founder of Crestline into a $42,000 assistant role. I turned the focus directly to Meridian's fraudulent submission, displaying internal audit reports that exposed fake inventory logs and money routed to a firm owned by Allison's cousin. Emails proved Allison instructed staff to hide the numbers and that Brandon personally suppressed the warnings to protect his promotion. Next, I presented the original trust documents and handwriting, analysis proving my signature on the land release had been forged by my father. The lender representative listened in real time as my legal team read Gregory's letters, which explicitly warned that the public must never find out I held the legal claim to the property. The consequences were immediate. Crestline rejected the proposal. The lender launched a fraud investigation, and Meridian's board held an emergency session on the spot, placing Brandon on administrative leave and stripping Allison of her power. Brandon and Allison turned on each other right in front of everyone, exposing their own greed as the meeting dissolved. Within weeks, Meridian terminated Brandon and fired Allison, while my legal team froze the stolen land parcel and forced my parents to restore my full legal title under threat of criminal prosecution. 2 months later, Brandon came to my office looking thin and desperate. He begged me to invest in Meridian, protect his remaining shares, and help him save his luxury house. I looked at my brother and told him he didn't miss me. He missed the version of me he could control. Learning I was wealthy didn't erase what he chose to do when he thought I had nothing. I handed him a formal legal notice requiring all future communication to go through my lawyers. Walking away wasn't revenge, it was my ultimate boundary. A year later, I turned that stolen parcel of land into a state-of-the-art training center for young logistics workers, naming the main hall after my grandmother Marjorie. At the grand opening, as I stood on stage answering questions from reporters, a new assistant walked up and handed me an envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter from Denise, begging for an invite to my upcoming board gala, claiming the family was proud and wanted to celebrate my overnight success. I smiled, folded the note, and dropped it straight into the trash can next to the podium. They spent my whole life trying to assign me a seat at their table, but they forgot one detail. I built the whole building.